Hi, everyone. Welcome to Hot Mess Moments.
So hot. Such a mess. Such a moment.
Your face when you do it. Welcome, everyone, to a callback, honey, because we finished season 3 of Lost, bitches.
I'm so excited. So what we're basically going to do today is have a throwback episode where instead of having a topic, the topic is Lost season 3. And so we are going to get into that. I can't wait. I have thoughts. I have opinions. I have theories. I have questions. I have so many things swimming in my mind.
Yes. But Beth, where can they find you?
Me?
Yeah.
Or the podcast, because sometimes I think you're asking me, and sometimes okay, yes. So hi everyone, I'm Beth Dixon, also known as Augusta Wind 11 online. You can catch me on all my social media channels there, as well as on RHAP's RuPaul's Drag Race recap and on my weekly meltdown. Dylan, where can people find you?
Yeah, my name is Dylan Zahner, also known as 8-Bit Dylan online. I make some confusing content online. I stream usually every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and very confused. That's the best way to describe it.
It's cringy and confusing.
Very cringy. My sense of humor is very cringe. And that's where you can find me. Speaking of streaming, before we...
Sorry, I just accidentally pushed this quarter into a bottle cap. And I can't get it out.
Welcome to this thrilling content
this
on
bottle
Hot Mess
cap
Moments.
Now is worth 25 cents.
Yeah, I don't even know how you get.
Oh, it worked! I dropped it, baby!
Okay.
Great content here.
That's your power now. You're special. Yeah,
that's
you
right.
You deserve to be on the island.
Just drop something on it.
What I wanted to say, speaking of streaming, we're still unsure where, but because we finished season 3 of Lost, Beth and I are going to try and schedule a time to stream the video game of Lost via Domus, which takes place across seasons 1, 2, and 3 of the show. So look forward to that. What I think I'm going to do is, regardless of wherever we stream it, I will export it as a video. So you'll be able to watch it on our YouTube channel, the full playthrough and everything, all our commentary and everything. I might even add the chat on the screen so that way people can see like the live commentary that might come in during
That's going to be a lot of fun. And that will also be in probably mid-July, just because the 4th, I'm going to be gone.
And I'm heading to Amsterdam for work. Speaking of lives, how are you doing? Speaking of all this.
I'm doing okay. I think we need to address the elephant in the room, which is that over the course of the past week. Yes, it is so juicy. I was just going to say, this national platform that Dylan has a juicy dumpy is bam.
Okay, no, but serious topic.
But seriously, since we last recorded, obviously we had a very tumultuous week with Supreme Court decisions. First, the Miranda rights, then Roe v. Wade being overturned. Now, public prayers in school, prayers in public school. Sorry, there's a lot of really shitty things going on there. Dylan and I are obviously affected and feel very passionately to support everybody whose rights have already been overturned or are probably in the process of doing so. And I think we need a little bit of escapism. And so our point of our podcast today is to provide some levity so that, hopefully y'all can have a smile on your face. I've had very few reasons to smile for the past week.
Totally.
But watching Lost with Dylan and binging it this past weekend, was definitely one of the biggest reasons to smile. So that's what we're going to focus on today.
Yeah. And also, please find things that make you happy. I know there's a lot of negativity out there in the world. So if us being fucking dumbasses can bring you a little bit of joy, you know what? We succeeded.
Also, if your state hasn't already had a primary, make sure to vote. I voted today in the New York State primary, and vote for the candidates that are going to make the change, that are actually going to make the change that you want to see. Which, if you're listening to us, I'm putting it out there, I'm sure is probably more progressive Democrats, but you go for whoever you think will actually make change and not just keep the status quo or go backwards in time.
Yes.
And also go to protests.
Yes. I did not go to protests. But I have a reason. My husband is obviously an immigrant.
Yep.
We are in the green card process. If I go to jail or if I get arrested in any way, shape, or form, my husband gets deported. So definitely don't want to risk my husband possibly getting kicked out of the country. But please do it in a safe way. You know what I would protest if I had a choice? The writing on Lost. Some of the writing on Lost.
To be fair, I feel like they're aligned here. I really think the writers of Lost said, you know what? We made Jack a little too good in season 1. We started to make him a little sour at the end of season 1.
Yeah.
Then we kind of leaned into he's mostly bad in season 2 with a few redeeming moments. Season 3, let's just make him bottom of the shoe scum. Like, what?
You know it's bad when you are rooting for Sawyer, someone that was very unlikable in season 1, that has had like
straight up racist.
Yeah, and has a complete 180 by season 3, where you're kind of like, where they're like propping up Sawyer to potentially be this like leader figure while everyone's away, and you're like, you know what? I don't know if I'm mad at it. I mean, I am a little bit, but I think he would lead better than Jack would.
Yeah. I also, why do these people need a leader? I don't get it.
I don't know.
Like,
it's so weird.
These people, first of all, if only we could have someone like that in our government that could get people to fall in line that easily. That'd be super, super nice. But right. I just don't understand it. Like, some of these people, like the way that Jack talks to them, especially in the finale, which we'll get to, is just like, I don't know why people just follow him.
Why do they gravitate to him? He's not a likable person.
He's not likable. And I'm going to be
like,
I feel bad for Matthew Fox. And I've said this to you, Dylan, like off the podcast, but I mean this sincerely. If I ever see Matthew Fox in something again, I literally will want, like, his face to me is just so punchable now. Like, which is a sign that he does a really good job with the acting.
Yeah.
But the rest of his career in my eyes is over, because there's no way he could play a likable person. Like, I can't imagine him being a person that I would want to spend any resemblance of time around.
See, that's how I feel about Ben. Like, I've seen Ben in other things, Michael Emerson, and it fucking is weird, because like Ben to me plays this like shitty but like cool, like villainous, like he's got his own, I don't even know villainous, but he's got his own prerogative, and he's got his
manipulative,
own goals. Very manipulative. So when you see him in like something that's not that, you're like, is he lying? So I don't trust him.
So that's what's so funny is I've seen him in a couple other things before this, versus I'd never seen Matthew Fox before or after. So for Michael Emerson, I've seen him in Person of Interest. So I think of him as like the super smart guy behind the Secret Service person who's carrying out all these like missions, and like this guy who created this technology that's like really advanced CCTV or something. Like, that's what I think of him as. He like never not plays in like a genius.
I'm looking through Michael Emerson's, or not Michael, I'm sorry. Matthew Fox really hasn't been in a lot of stuff.
That's because he knows. He knows I'm just going to be punchable wherever I go. So therefore I should just have a different career.
Apparently he's in a show called Last Light that I've never heard of. It's a TV miniseries. It says your family, your world. What if all disappeared tomorrow? If society
if it's Matthew Fox, I'm fine.
How far would you go to save the ones you love?
Yeah, I
don't know.
If Jack was a part of that family, I wouldn't go that far.
I will say it does say that he did retire from acting in 2014. So like he made the choice to retire.
He knows. I'm just saying, he knows that this role has ruined his ability to get cast in anything. And there are definitely certain people I feel like that, right? There are certain people that like I will never be able to like shake shake who they are, like off of a TV show. I think Fran Drescher is a perfect example of that. I don't care what else she's been in. It always will come back to, well, she's not the nanny right now. And that's all I see her as. Maxwell Sheffield's actor, Charles Shaughnessy, I feel like has had kind of a similar issue. But what's interesting with him is like he got a start on soap operas, and now like that he's in his like mid 60s, he's returned back to soap operas. Like they're casting him as like the dashing older, boomer guy who's like on the soap operas. And I think that, and he's like playing villains and such. And I think that's kind of cool. But
ooh, girl, the drama. I am like looking up now about Matthew Fox. Okay, first off, again, nothing confirmed.
okay.
But Dominic Monaghan
Yep.
tweeted back in 2012 that Matthew Fox beats women, not isolated incidents, but often. Fox said that he denied the claim, and he's like, I've never hit a woman. I don't know why he's saying this. And then he also went in Men's Journal and stated that he never did this as well. So he's like just confused why. But apparently, and he was accused of assaulting a female bus driver back in 2011. So
I fucking called it. I don't think he's acting in the show. He's just a shit human being. And you know what, Matthew Fox, I do want to punch you in your face now.
Fuck you, Matthew Fox. Okay. Okay. So regardless of Matthew Fox, regardless of him, what is your review of season 3 of Lost in comparison to the first 2 seasons?
Season 3 was by far my favorite season.
I'm shocked by that.
Because I like action. I want answers. And even if I'm not happy with what the answers are, there were like maybe 4 or 5 episodes total throughout the series that didn't advance a certain plot point, that were there as a fit. Like we had the stupid Jack tattoo episode, which is the least favorite episode of the entire season. That one was so stupid and didn't do anything. The Nikki and Paulo episode doesn't do anything except for just like end their ridiculously short storyline.
And it doesn't even like factor into the main story, except for the fact that it gets people, I guess, on board to have Sawyer be a leader. But like, they could have done that with anything. It didn't have to be Nikki and Paulo.
It was useless. And there was a few other episodes that I know didn't really do much, right? So I felt like there were more quote unquote filler episodes that didn't add something to the plot than we've had in season 1 or season 2. But conversely, if it wasn't like that, the plot moved. We got to see so much more from the others. I constantly, like, there's so many more complex characters I could sink my teeth into, including like Juliette and Ben, and like the whole structure of the others. Like, what are they doing there? I really, this to me, I want action. That's what I want. And in the same way, I don't know why I always bring it back to Game of Thrones, because they're like really nothing alike. But one of the issues don't get me wrong, season 3 of Game of Thrones was a great season, right? But it's the first half of a book where they just set up all this action for like one big event to happen that happens in the middle of the book. And that ends up being like the main thing that happens in that entire season. And that's kind of a bummer, because you're like, okay, and then season 4, because it's the ending of that book, is like boom, 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 boom. And everyone's like, season 4 of Game of Thrones is like one of the best. I'm like, yeah, because it had all the action in it. And season 3 was solid. I'm somebody who's like that, who's like, okay, I don't want any more prep, just execute.
I'm so excited. You are gonna fucking love season 4, 5, and 6. 4, 5, and 6 is basically all action. That's all.
I'm here for it, because that's what I want. Because at this point, I don't care about the survival portion. I don't care about those little things. Like, the dynamics of power are only interesting in the way that they advance the plot. I don't care from episode to episode. Like, the fact that Sawyer is no longer the leader, like that shift, like there's so many things there that honestly, that's the weakest part of the writing, is them trying to figure out what to do with some characters rather than just write what the plot is and then write how those characters would react in that plot.
Yeah. How I would describe Like, okay, so season 4, 5, and 6 feels like almost a different show.
Ooh.
And that is because what happened towards the end of season 3 was ABC wanted to beat a dead horse. They wanted the show to go on for well past 6 seasons. The writers and producers wanted to get off Lost and do other things because they were basically like, we're kind of done with the show, but we do want to end it our way. So they did something unprecedented in the history of television. They negotiated to be renewed for 3 seasons in advance, and have it a definitive endpoint for the show. So they were greenlit for 3 seasons, as opposed to just normally at this time, this was unheard of for like this type of show. And so they knew how many episodes, how many hours of content they had left to get to the end point. Do I agree with the use of those hours? We'll see. But because they had a set amount of hours, it goes like this. This story fucking is thrown at you like so fast. And season 4, the writer's strike happens. And so there's less episodes in season 4, which means every episode that plot is getting moved. There is no filler.
That is what I'm looking for
nothing.
And you'll also find too, not that so for full disclosure, we have not watched The Nanny like since we started picking up Lost again. So the next thing we'll do is finish season 3 of The Nanny, and then we'll come back to Lost, and then we'll do The Nanny and kind of go back and forth a little bit. But what's so interesting to me is that I think that we can have a whole discussion when we actually finish The Nanny season 3, is that I think that we'll find that 2 seemingly unrelated shows are having similar things, which I'm going to call the season 3 curse, right?
Yeah.
Which is that, you get to the end of your 3rd season and there's this idea of like, okay, what do we do now in order?
Where are we going?
Where are we going? And I said this to you the other day, not that there's anything that's like, it's not like Fran's all of a sudden deserted on an island that's mysterious.
I'm here for that.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
But there is a certain level of, so the show's going in a different direction when the finale hits, right?
I'm excited.
So that's what I think is going to be really exciting, is to kind of compare and contrast these 2 shows at that point. But I do think that the 3rd season, especially for shows like this, is often where shows either go off the rail or they get even better. I think season 3 is always the make or break season. Season 1, all the writers have figured out what they want to do. Season 2 is, okay, how do we maintain this and get people continuing to be interested? Season 3 is where they have to throw things at the wall and see what sticks. And they're either successful in it or it's just a hot mess.
Yeah.
And so, like, I think about another show that was on ABC at the same time, which was Desperate Housewives, and they had a very similar thing. And you can't help but notice that Lost and Desperate Housewives had a similar run because they were the 2 shows that ABC was like basically living off of in the mid 2000s and late 2000s. So you see all of a sudden, in this in between season range, that all of a sudden Desperate Housewives moves forward 5 years. And you're like, oh, okay. Like, and you see Lost, probably, I haven't actually watched it, but based off what you're saying, like, just be more action oriented, because people
it's wild.
Start needing answers now, right? They've been watching for 60, 70 some episodes, and they're saying, okay, you've given me some answers and you fed me a little bit, but I'm going to need more. I'm going to need it now.
Some things to prepare you for, because so one of one of the biggest myths about Lost, I'm going to say it now to squash it, is people think that they didn't have a game plan for how the show was going to end.
Gotcha.
That is vehemently false. I am not going to spoil anything.
No, please don't.
It is extremely clear that there is a through line from season 1 to season 6, and
Mhm.
like how the story was meant to ebb and flow. And I think they did a good job about that. Now, there are some things about seasons 4, 5, and 6, without getting into spoiler territory, that I think while you have a show that's going to focus now more on the action, I think because of that, we're rapidly going through mysteries and answers, mysteries and answers, mysteries and answers. And
Mhm.
so, as Tyler put it, for those who don't know, Tyler, longtime listener, also
Friend of the
co-host
show.
of my weekly meltdown with
Yeah.
Beth, watched these episodes with us, the finale.
Mhm.
As he put it, he said Mike Bloom says it best, that season 1, 2, and 3 are like book 1 of Lost, and then you're now getting into like the next era.
Cool.
Also, if I'm not mistaken, the camera quality gets better because they up it into
Technology.
like, I think technology gets better.
Probably
Over
about the
time.
time that people started getting HD, because standard
Yeah.
definition was still a thing into the mid 2000s and late 2000s. And HD, even the way that we think about HD now, was not the same quality HD.
Absolutely not.
So
Okay,
actually,
so
speaking of
yeah, you
Tyler,
go.
he did submit a few different questions for me.
Oh,
And because we, as you mentioned, Tyler, yourself, and your husband and I all watched the last 2 episodes of, so the finale and the episode before that, together. And so he has questions for me, and when I look at them, they're all about the finale and post finale. So however we can structure this, I do want to make sure I get to at least some of his questions, because I've got
yeah.
answers.
Yeah, let's first review the episodes that
Sure.
we covered, and then let's get into those questions.
Lovely.
Because I want to know your thoughts on like flash forwards, which are like huge for this type of television. This is like, I think, the first television show to really tackle flash forwards, where we're seeing story that hasn't happened yet
Yeah.
in the show. All right. So in between this last podcast and this one, we managed to watch Left Behind, which is the Kate-centric one, One of Us, the Juliette-centric one, Catch 22, which is the Desmond-centric one, DOC, the Sun-centric one, The Brig, which is the Locke-centric one, The Man Behind the Curtain, the Ben-centric one, Greatest Hits, the Charlie one, and then Through the Looking Glass, parts 1 and parts 2, which is the Jack one. So there's a lot of hours of content that we have consumed. And then
In 2 days, by the way.
In 2 days.
We did it Saturday, Sunday.
So we're not going to clearly cover every single episode.
No.
What I think the best way to do this is story beats. So what story beats jumped out at you in these episodes that you thought were really interesting? Maybe things you didn't like, maybe things you liked, things that you want to talk about?
Yeah. So the first thing that comes to mind is, okay, so I complain a lot about Jack being a horrible person. I complain a lot about Charlie being a horrible person. And someone who is also a horrible person, but in a fun way to watch, is Benjamin Line. Like, I think that Ben's character is so interesting. And I actually root for him, even though he's clearly fucking sociopathic. Like, it's like insane. Like, I'm like, yes, you better kill all those Dharma Initiative bitches, like including your father, and like all those things. Like the guy who was there and basically saved you at birth in his car, like, you better work and kill him. And you have like this sociopathic tendency from a child. Like, but I love seeing his background, because that was something that showed, tied a loose end. What happened to the Dharma Initiative? Well, Ben happened to the Dharma Initiative. So that's pretty interesting.
That motherfucker did it.
And it also, I think, shows the parallel of why he's so invested in keeping the status quo of the island, because literally without him, he wouldn't have this leadership position. I'm still confused as to why the guy who has eyeliner but doesn't actually have eyeliner. Richard. Yeah, I'm confused how he hasn't aged. He just got a haircut. And how Ben is the leader and not him, for example. I want to know more about, the Dharma Initiative, when Ben was younger, called them the natives on the island.
The hostiles, I think.
So what was that?
They call them the natives, and they also use the hostiles.
Hostels. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think, and I'm curious to know, what does it mean that they're native onto the island? First of all, specifically speaking, because it's a bunch of white people. So that's a really interesting thing to be using the term native to people who I just have a hard time believing white people were like, let me take over this tropical island. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So like,
no, that is a good observation though. Like they are clearly not of like a native descent that you would
yeah,
think
they're
on an
not
island.
indigenous
They're
people.
clearly like people that maybe have migrated here or something. Like they clearly were not born on this island, or maybe they were, but they just
Yeah,
don't look
and
like
clearly because there's issues. So that leads to the biggest plot point that we get with Juliette and Ben and the others, which is this idea that if you conceive on the island, like you can't bring a child because the mother's going to die, which is converse to the fact that everybody who like gets sick or injured heals really quickly. So it's a really interesting thing that the thing that would bring life onto the island can't happen, but things that would end lives traditionally heals really quickly. So I still maintain this is some kind of waiting place thing where like a baby wouldn't be born into purgatory, right?
Yeah.
But if the baby was brought from the outside into this waiting place in the case of Claire, could be that case.
And same with like Rousseau, because Rousseau was pregnant. Yeah.
So we clearly know that between Rousseau and Claire, that if a baby, which brings me to another point that I think is interesting. The others, I'm assuming, didn't do anything to Rousseau to give her, because this was Juliette's only been there for 3 years and Rousseau's been there for 16 years.
Yeah.
So clearly there was no reason to give Claire all of those like serums and such, because Rousseau already delivered a baby fine on the island who's a part of their community. So it's interesting that they felt the need to go through all of that with Claire. And we find out that we were just trying to make sure the baby would be okay and that Claire would be okay. But also we find out that it was just so they could get a device implanted into Claire too. I don't know.
I truly think the reason is this is a form of desperation from Juliette, because she wants to get off this island so bad. And she knows that if she cannot give an answer to Ben about what's going on, she's stuck here forever. And so you see her clinging at straws and being like, all right, let's check on Claire. Let's try to learn some more information about what's going on with these pregnancies. Let's look at Sun. Oh my God, someone else who's pregnant. I can learn more because I need to find an answer because I want to get off this island. And I think like that's what's interesting about Juliette's character by the end of season 3 is you see her have that shift in her mind. She's like, the sub's gone. Ben has no power over me anymore. Fuck the others. And I'm going to like rebel against them.
And that's why I think Juliette is just such an interesting, amazing character, because I do think that she's so manipulative and has these evil tendencies. And sometimes she uses them for quote unquote good. And sometimes she uses them for selfish reasons. And that is a more realistic character to me than the Bens and the Jacks of the world.
And the Kates.
Don't even get me started.
She's such a bad character.
She's so bad. Like it's like anytime she and Jack are on the same scene, like I'm telling you, it's actually getting to a point where it's unwatchable for me.
It's so bad.
When she was separated from Jack, that's the best she's ever been as a character.
Honestly, they need to separate these two, because I don't like this puppy dog love that has like fallen to the wayside. Speaking of love, Juliette, you can do better.
Speaking of love, Jack just going, because I love you. Fuck off. Fuck off with all of this. It's God. I hate this so much. Like it actually makes me like actually not want to watch any scenes that they're in. I'm like, I mean, Dylan can attest. How many times do you think I've like rolled my eyes aggressively?
Every time.
Like every time. At least twice in that scene. Like not even like once every time they're together. It's like,
So I have a question for you.
Yes.
First off, okay, this isn't my actual question, but I'm just curious. Thoughts on Charlie's death, which was a huge cultural moment in the fandom of Lost. Because I don't think Charlie was that popular of a character until the second half of Lost when he started getting a purpose. Because like his character was pretty tragic for the first two seasons. Because I remember you mentioning, you're like, why do people like Charlie? And the thing is, people didn't like Charlie for most of the show. It wasn't until people started realizing that he's probably going to die in the second half that he starts like having this like flip of a script. And I think the greatest hits episode really resonated with a large chunk of the Lost audience because he's like kind of writing his five greatest hits, his five greatest moments in his life. And it's a lot, it's pretty emotional, where it's like, if you're following the Charlie and Claire storyline, you see a guy who like was a drug addict, who tried to get clean, had a relapse on the island, but it wasn't like an actual drug relapse. It was a relapse and like an emotional relapse. And he starts trying to make his life better, only learning that he has to give his life up in order to save everyone else. And like, it was emotional for a lot of people, but I'm curious for you, someone that did not like Charlie and kind of was looking forward to him dying. What did that mean to you?
Let's contextualize this. I wasn't kind of looking forward to him dying. I was 100% looking forward. Like, I was watching and I was like, yes, Charlie's gonna die. Here's the thing. It's 2022. Yeah. I don't have any space for a man who can't hear the word no from a woman and can't respect boundaries. I don't have time or space. Fuck all the way off. Okay.
Yeah.
Never liked his character. I hate the fact that Claire just all of a sudden, like weirdly out of nowhere, just forgives him again.
Yes.
That made no sense in the writing.
It makes no sense.
It made no sense in the writing. His character to me was a throwaway character. Like there was no purpose to this character. I'm fine that he's gone. I am happy that he did something to evolve the plot at the very end. Like the way that he dies is being able to turn it so the communications aren't jammed anymore, so they can get a signal. And he's able to communicate with Penny, even though Desmond's right there. Desmond can't hear. And secondly, he's able to, in his last action, write on his hand that it's not Penny's boat.
It's such a great moment.
There were so many great things about that, right? However, and we discussed this off the podcast, but I am here to talk about this now. This made no sense from a writing standpoint. The fact, first of all, that Mikhail could explode a grenade underwater. What? That's number one. Two, the fact that Mikhail did not blow up himself when he had to hold it in place.
He's dead. Yeah, he definitely died from that. Like he
was like and then floated away. I was like, what?
It blew up and he was gone. Yeah, I will go on record and say he is dead. He is
okay. Thank God, because if he had survived that, I'd be like, that is so fucking stupid. Because it's not like he could just leave it there and go away. It would fall in the water, so he had to hold it into that place. Anyway, so third, Charlie, there's clearly a circular window that your tiny little body could fit through if he needed to swim out. What you end up doing in this situation is closing yourself in the room rather than just leaving the room and closing the door and being outside with Desmond, or at the very least saying, Desmond, run, we got to get the diving equipment. And I know what he's really doing is the reason why he shuts the door is because Desmond would die saying hello to Penny. Like, I know that.
And he believes that if he stays alive, that the helicopter will not come for Claire. Because that's the way that Desmond had told him. He's like, if anything changes about this vision, that future that I saw won't happen. And so he thinks that he needs to die in this situation in order to keep that timeline moving forward. So that actually leads. Oh, wait,
I just want to just quickly say, though, I hate Charlie, didn't like him, blah, blah, blah. I never would wish drowning upon my worst enemy. Though.
Oh my God. That'd be so awful.
That is, I genuinely, I think I'd rather I don't know. Any form of suffocation, I think, is absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
Um, like the idea that Nikki and Paulo were buried alive is like that's scary to me. Like no, but knowing that you're going to drown and sticking with it, like I do give Charlie props for that last episode because it would have been so easy just to be like, no, I'm just going to follow my instincts and leave this and see what happens, or allow Desmond to go down and do this for me or whatever. And he didn't, and he accepted his fate and was able to go. I do want to also say the other thing that I thought was really interesting was, is it Naomi? Is that the character?
Yeah.
I think that Naomi's character is interesting. I can't wait to see who she's really with. If Ben was lying about like she's some kind of evil force, like there's somebody else, right? Or if she's somebody who actually is good, but does have an adverse effect on the others. So like my theory is that the others won't leave the island unless they want to, like someone like Juliette, right? And
Yeah.
say like, no, this is our island. We're staying here. I assume Locke won't leave the island. I think Locke will stay on the island. So there's clearly going to be people who stay on the island and people who are taken away. Unless the reason why Ben was so scared is because he knows that if any government agencies were able to find that they were there, they would force everyone to leave the island, which is what I actually think would be the case. I think it was necessary to introduce a third group or entity at this point that could either combine forces of the others in the flight crash people together to either come against somebody or to have weird interminglings where there's people who crashed who want to stay on the island. There's people and the others who want to leave the island and have this like mix of people. So I do think that this third entity was necessary going into a fourth season. I don't necessarily know exactly who they are, what they're doing. I do know, obviously, with the flash forward that Jack and Kate at least leave the island. Kate leaving the island is really interesting to me because she's somebody that I think would have stayed, which is what further makes me think that Locke ended up leaving the island, that Ben ended up leaving the island, those different kinds of people.
Yeah, let's talk about the flash forwards. So what are your thoughts on how far in the future do you think that is of them leaving the island?
I would assume it's about,
mind you, they've already planned like what seasons 4, 5, and 6 are because they knew that they had pitched and gotten 3 more seasons. So they were able to storyboard in advance what was going to happen. And
so what I don't know, right, is if this is months or a year afterwards, or if this is many years, because season 4, 5, 6 could very well have, maybe season 4 is them, they haven't actually left the island yet. It's whatever this third entity is and all that stuff. And the 5th seasons where they leave the island. And we see more of like the flashbacks to them on the island and how we see them in real life and adjusting. And then the 6th one is this drive to get back to the island and to finish unfinished business. I could very well see it be something like that. Yeah. Or I could see this being, nope, everyone is rescued. And we start off season 4 with everyone's rescued and you have Jack trying to get back on the island, or you have people who stayed on the island. Like, I don't know where that's going. I feel like those are the two approaches.
That's pretty exciting, though, to think about.
Yes. So, and that actually leads to, so Tyler had a few questions. One of them was, how many and who do you think leave the island? And I think I'm going to go with the theory that the government comes in, or like some kind of government comes in and says, y'all need to get the fuck out. Because I would imagine the Dharma Initiative was government funded to a certain extent.
We don't know. We know it was the Hanzo. What was his name? They said it in like season 2.
Yeah, they said it. They said it earlier in the series, but a lot of those funded projects have to go through a pretty big government agency, especially if you're going to do something in a place that doesn't have a nationality. I would assume like the US government in some capacity, like maybe it was highly classified, knew of this. So I would imagine, I'm going to go with the theory that everybody leaves the island,
Okay.
whether they want to or not. He also had the question. So here are the other questions. He said, who's in the coffin? Who do you think Kate was referring to when she tells Jack, I have to go? He's going to be wondering where I am in the flash forward. What do you think happens between Jack, Ben, and Locke at the radio tower? So those are the other 3 questions, right?
Okay.
So I'm going to kind of go backwards. The radio tower, I think, is the next chronological thing that would have happened, obviously.
Yeah.
I think you're going to find out that Ben and Locke are saying, like, we don't want to leave. I don't think that Jack would allow Ben to just go. I think that he takes Ben off the island as like a fuck you to Ben, and make sure he does get rescued. And I think that he would do the same thing for Locke as well. And I think that if Locke were to leave the island, I could see him reverting back to being a paraplegic. So I think there would be a really interesting factor there of the 3 of them discussing, because Locke can't pull a trigger, but he certainly killed Naomi to try to stop it.
He did.
And he tried to stop the sub and all these other things. And so I could see everybody turning on Locke, everybody turning on Ben. But if they do that, it means that there's something that they are right about, because Lost is not a show that just goes, okay, that they were evil and that was it. Yay. It means that there's something right about them. So I think the right thing would be Ben's whole theory about this group not being a good group.
Okay. Yeah.
So I think that that's something that would happen there. Who do I think is in the coffin? I think it has to be somebody that Jack has a complicated emotional relationship with. So it could, and somebody that clearly didn't have anybody who showed up to the funeral.
Yeah, which is surprising.
I think my first instinct was to think it's Sawyer, because, nobody would show up. But I actually think people would show up to Sawyer's funeral from the island. Like, I think that Jin and Sun would come. I think that Hurley would go.
Okay.
I think those people would show up to his funeral, right?
Yeah.
I think the coffin had either Locke or Ben in it, because I don't think anybody would go to there, especially how they acted up at the radio tower, all those different kinds of things. I think that they get taken off. And so I also think that Jack would respond like that to Locke and not to Sawyer, because Sawyer could have died in the other's compound if it weren't for Jack. And Jack only let Sawyer live because of Kate, really, at the end of the day. Like, I don't think Jack wanted Sawyer to die, but I think that he was so much more gung-ho about saving Sawyer's life in that situation by making sure that Kate was okay. And I think it'll be interesting to see, which I think that leads to his other question. Who do you think Kate was referring to when she tells Jack, I have to go, he'll be wondering where I am? I think that what people are obviously going to think is that, it's got to be Sawyer, to which I then think it can't be Sawyer then, because it's too obvious that it would be Sawyer. Okay. So I don't know who the he is. I don't think it's her parole officer, or not the parole officer, the marshal, because he's dead. So I don't know, but she looks good. And she's clearly going by.
That looked like a filter. That she
had a Snapchat filter. She had butterflies hanging around her face and like little sparkles. Her eyes were rainbow color.
There was some sort of post-processing or post-production done on her face.
She opened her mouth and that rainbow fell out. You remember that filter on Snapchat where everybody would go, bleh, and it was so stupid. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. And I will say for the listeners at home, and Dylan and Tyler and I discussed this afterwards. They asked me, Beth, did you know that this was a flash forward the entire time? And I sussed out it was a flash forward, but then it got me double thinking it. So I figured it was a flash forward for 2 reasons. One, I didn't think that this fit with the timeline of the past of what we've already seen from like when he went to Thailand, or when he was divorcing Sarah, or all these other things of like all of a sudden he has facial hair excuse me, is an alcoholic and addicted to drugs. Like that doesn't make sense for what we've seen in the past.
And she's pregnant, which is
And
like very
Sarah's
strange.
pregnant. So those are the two things that I went, this is a flash forward instead of a flashback. But then what got me questioning that is they did a throwaway line where he's basically getting confronted by the head of surgery. And he says, why don't you take me down to my father and you'll see like which one of us is drunker right now in this moment. And I was like, your dad is dead. So I have no idea if it's a flash forward, if that makes sense. So I'm interested to see like why that line makes sense. Like, do all the people who were technically dead on the plane or on the island, are they actually alive? Because we also heard from Naomi that everybody's bodies were accounted for and they were actually dead when they found the plane wreckage. So there's something here that I think that the island maybe doesn't make sense. And maybe it's in a different dimension or something like that. Maybe Christian Shepherd is alive, which would be interesting. Finally, the other thing I can't wait to, I hope this comes out. I hope there's a way that Claire and Jack find out that they are half siblings.
Oh yeah. That revelation this season.
I think that would be so interesting, especially given Jack's track record of not listening to the women who he's closest to. Would be like, oh, this all makes sense. You are my sister. It's why I didn't pay attention to you at all when you were saying that Ethan was attacking you and you were pregnant and asleep.
Yeah, no, that definitely tracks for Jack. I'm also very, very curious with you knowing that there's only 3 seasons left of this show and it's going to be pretty fast paced.
Yeah.
What are some big overarching questions that you'll be pissed off if they don't answer?
I will be pissed off if they don't answer what the point of the Dharma Initiative is.
Okay.
Who the hostiles or the others really are. What was their business on the island? Those kind of things. 3, I'm going to be pissed off if I can't figure out what this like smoke monster business is. It seems like Juliette, and I don't know because she was lying to Kate at this moment. It seemed like Juliette literally didn't know much about this creature, which seems weird that the others wouldn't know much about it. Rousseau called it a security measure earlier. We find out later that it was not the others' security measure. And Ben was a part of Dharma, and it clearly wasn't a Dharma measure. So who is that about? 4, I want to know why some of these anachronisms are happening on the island, right? Like what's going on with the pirate ship on the Black Rock? Like what's going on there? Like there's so many aspects of this island that we still have not gotten a clear answer for. I want those clear answers. In number 5, I will be pissed if we don't hear what happened to Walt and Michael, because my theory is that, he gave them coordinates to sail, but there's no way Ben just lets Jacob or not Jacob, Walt leave the island. Like there's no way, especially with the, the missing piece that we just watched before we recorded this, where Juliette is showing like Walt's ability to basically lead birds over to a window and die. Like that's what we saw him do in Australia as well. And he knows that there's something special about him. There's no way he just lets him leave the island. So I really feel like Michael and Walt are going to come back. I don't think that they're just gone. We saw Walt a little bit in the finale. And another, I just mentioned it too, and I forgot what I was saying.
I have one more question after this.
I just said something. I kind of mentioned it in passing as an answer. Now I forgot, but that was another portion of something I wanted to get answered.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
This might be one thing. I want to know your thoughts on Jacob. So
okay, that was it actually. Yeah.
Oh, it was? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because I mentioned Jacob by accident when I meant to say Walt. I want to learn who Jacob is. So if we go from like a quote unquote biblical sense, if this place is like a purgatory waiting place, whatever, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Jacob whispers to Locke, help me, right? I have a feeling that maybe Jacob is I don't know if he's the biblical Jacob, and I'm going to be 100% honest in that I don't remember much of Jacob's story from the Bible because it's been many years since I've read the Bible. But I could see him being like some kind of trapped angel, essentially. And Ben is some kind of trapped devil, right?
Yeah.
And Ben is trying to make it seem like he gets all this information from Jacob, but really what he's doing is keeping Jacob trapped there so that he can hold the power on the island. And maybe the shadow monster is a manifestation of Ben's, right? Of some
Maybe.
sort. And maybe he's the one who has this. I don't know. I wouldn't be shocked if that's kind of how it is. I feel like people manifest things on this island. We had this whole idea that maybe Locke had brought his father to this island. Maybe manifested that. We see that Walt can clearly have manifested things with, like we saw it with birds, or he just made things happen around him. And I think that Ben's another person who's like that. I think he so desperately wanted to see his mom. His mom appears on the island, right? I think Jack is like that with his father, with needing loose ends. And we've seen this from many people who on this island in particular can manifest things to happen. I think that we will find out that on like a very bare bones level, Jacob is some kind of trapped good entity and Ben represents a bad entity and who's overtaking it. So the balance of the island is overthrown.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. I'm really excited.
High talking about this, by the way, and I'm not high.
It's wild. It's gonna get even more wild as the show goes on. Because obviously, Lost likes the weird. So I am going to give you a sneak peek of the name of the first episode of season 4.
Okay.
And I'll have you guess who you think it's about, and then you're gonna give me your MVP and LVP for season 3.
Okay.
The first episode is called The Beginning of the End, in reference to what Ben says, where he says, if you make connection with that, it's the beginning of the end. So the title of this episode is The Beginning of the End. Who do you think it's a centric episode of?
Well, it could be Ben.
It's a surprise. I will say that.
Oh, okay. Hold on. If it's a surprise.
It's not who you think it would be.
Okay. So it would likely. So is it somebody that we've gotten a flashback from before?
Yes.
Okay. So my immediate thoughts are it's either Ben, Jack, or Locke, but I could also see it being Juliette. So that means it's not any of those 4. So I'm going to guess and go out on a limb and say Hurley or Claire.
Right. It is a Hurley-centric episode for the first episode of the season.
That's awesome.
It's a really fucking good episode.
That's another thing I don't know. What's up with the numbers? That's what I wanted.
Yeah.
As we go along, literally, I will just go, oh, that's another thing. This is the other thing I want to know. Like those.
That Welcome to Lost. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that pretty much, that's going to be the first episode whenever we come back to watching season 4. Season 4, I think for me is one of the strongest seasons for me, just because it is so clear cut. I don't think it's better than season 3 though.
Okay.
And that's because season 3 has more iconic moments. I will say though, season 4 has hands down one of the best hours of television in the form of the episode titled The Constant.
And what's great about that is because I heard you tell Tyler and me my favorite episode of the series is in season 4, and Tyler knew exactly which episode you were talking about. Exactly. So I cannot wait to watch.
It's so good. It could have been a movie. Like that is how fucking great of an episode it is. And I will have the tissues ready because I will fucking ugly cry during it. It always makes me ugly cry. during it. So
Remind me to wear glasses then when I'm
yeah. And I'm not going to say why. It could be a good thing or a bad thing of why I cry. But Beth, who's your MVP and LVP for season 3 of Lost?
This is obvious. My MVP is Juliette. I asked Dylan before we went live, who do you think my MVP, my LVP are? And he guessed them both correctly. My MVP.
I did?
Yeah. My MVP is Juliette. I think she's just the best character on the show. She has a little bit of mystery that I'm still trying to figure her out. I can never figure out her motivations. That instantly makes her such a likable character for me. I love that she's helped out people. I love that she's screwed over people. I love that you just don't know where she's coming from, but at the same time, like you do know where she's coming from. She's just such an interesting character for me. So I love Juliette. I think she bridges the gap between the others and the crash survivor people. Like I really think that she's just such an interesting character. So she's my MVP for season 3. My LVP comes as no surprise to anybody. It's motherfucking Jack Shepherd. That motherfucking bitch. The only thing that would have made me happier is if he had died instead of Charlie. And that's saying something because I'm happy Charlie died. Now I don't want to sound too cold-hearted here. I want to take a step back and say I almost cried when he was going through all of his memories and when he gave Desmond the note. I'm talking about Charlie. Gave Desmond, said, "Hey, give this to Claire." I felt the little, like how you get like the little nose sensation that's like, bitch, you're gonna cry. That started to tingle, and now don't you dare. You are not gonna cry tears over this fucking man. You are not gonna do it. And I kept it together, but it was a little difficult. But no, Jack is just continues to be a low life piece of shit. And in his flash forwards, this is what I can't stand about him. Mm-hmm. He makes a decision for other people and he can't live with it himself. He tries to fix other people. He can't live with it himself. At this point, just go away. Like, oh my gosh, he drives me absolutely crazy.
Oh my gosh. Well, I hope you all enjoyed our review and recap of season 3 of Lost. If you are new here to the podcast, we started off as a podcast reviewing both Lost and The Nanny. We now cover a multitude of different topics every single week, but this has been a nice like homage to our origins of Hot Mess Moments.
Our previous structure.
Yes. Please, if you have not already, please follow us at Hot Mess Moments on Twitter. And also consider subscribing. We just reached over 100 subscribers on our YouTube channel, which is insane. Or you can obviously listen to us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, which you can rate us 5 stars.
Yes, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It helps other people find our content. And shout out to the people who found us and have just been enjoying our content who weren't a part of our communities or listened to other podcasts or streams that we've done beforehand. Thank you so much for sticking around and listening to our hot mess asses. We appreciate that.
Yeah. And we have more hot mess for you in the future. So we'll see you next Thursday with another podcast. And until then, stay awesome, stay beautiful, you lovely people.
Bye.